The courthouse was alive with the usual hum of activity. Lawyers shuffled papers, witnesses waited nervously on wooden benches, and clerks typed furiously at their desks. It was a typical day in the heart of the city, where justice was supposed to be blind but often felt anything but fair. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and old books, mingling with the occasional waft of coffee from the nearby cafe. People moved quickly, their footsteps echoing down the long, tiled corridors. Kevin Doyle, a police officer with years of experience under his belt, strode through the hallway with an air of authority. He wasn't a tall man, but he carried himself, as though he owned the place. His uniform was crisp, his badge gleaming and his expression stern. Kevin had always prided himself on being tough, a reputation that had earned him both respect and resentment over the years. But there was something else about him, something less admirable. Kevin harbored deep prejudices, ones he rarely bothered to hide. To him, the world was divided into us and them, and he made no secret of which side he stood on. Today, however, things were different. Kevin wasn't here for routine patrol or to testify in court. He was escorting a handcuffed suspect named Derek, a young black man accused of petty theft. Derek shuffled along beside Kevin, his head bowed and shoulders slumped. He looked tired, defeated even, as if he already knew how this story would end. Kevin's grip on Derek's arm was firm, almost too tight, as though he expected the younger man to bolt at any moment. As they passed through the crowded corridor, people instinctively stepped aside, clearing a path for the pair. Some watched curiously, while others avoided eye contact altogether. Among the crowd stood Judge Marcus Hale, a figure who commanded attention without even trying. Tall and broad-shouldered, Judge Hale exuded calm confidence. His dark skin contrasted sharply with the pale walls of the courthouse, and his eyes seemed to take in everything around him. He was known for his fairness, his sharp mind, and his unwavering commitment to justice. Unlike many judges, Judge Hale didn't rely on intimidation to maintain order. Instead, he led with quiet strength, earning the trust of those who appeared before him. Judge Hale had been heading toward his chambers when he noticed Kevin and Derek approaching. Something about the scene caught his attention, the way Kevin gripped Derek's arm, the tension radiating off the officer like heat waves. Judge Hale slowed his pace, observing silently. He had seen officers like Kevin before, men who believed their badges gave them permission to act above the law. It troubled him deeply, but he also knew better than to intervene without cause. For now, he simply watched. But fate has a way of intervening when least expected. Derek stumbled suddenly, his foot catching on a crack in the floor. Instinctively, he reached out to steady himself, bumping into Kevin's side. The impact caused Kevin to lose his balance momentarily, and his baton slipped from its holster, clattering loudly onto the floor. Gasps rippled through the hallway as heads turned toward the commotion. Derek froze, panic flashing across his face. "I'm sorry," he stammered, raising his cuffed hands defensively. "I didn't mean to." Before Derek could finish, Kevin reacted. Years of pent-up anger and frustration boiled over in an instant. Without thinking, he raised his hand and delivered a sharp slap, not to Derek but to the person standing directly behind him. The blow landed squarely on Judge Hale's cheek. For a split second, time seemed to stop. The sound of the slap echoed through the hallway, sharp and unmistakable. Everyone froze, their eyes wide with shock. Even Kevin stood rooted to the spot, his hand still raised mid-air. Slowly, he turned to see who he had hit, and immediately wished he hadn't. Judge Hale stood there, his jaw clenched and his face unreadable. There was no trace of pain or surprise in his expression, only a quiet intensity that sent chills down Kevin's spine. What just happened?" Someone whispered nearby, breaking the silence. Murmurs spread like wildfire as people tried to process what they had witnessed. A police officer had struck a judge, a respected authority figure in broad daylight in front of dozens of witnesses. The sheer audacity of it was staggering. Judge Hale took a step forward, closing the distance between himself and Kevin. His movements were deliberate, unhurried, as though he were weighing every action carefully. When he finally spoke, his voice was low but carried enough weight to silence the entire hallway. "Officer Doyle," he said, his tone measured but laced with steel, "you've made your choice." Kevin blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "I didn't mean to." "Save your excuses," Judge Hale interrupted, cutting him off with a wave of his hand. His gaze bore into Kevin's, unyielding and piercing. "You will understand soon enough." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. No one dared to speak. Security guards began moving cautiously toward the scene, unsure of how to handle the situation. One of them reached for his radio, likely calling for backup, while another gestured for bystanders to clear the area. Despite the growing chaos, Judge Hale remained composed, his focus never wavering from Kevin. Meanwhile, Kevin's mind raced. What did the judge mean by, "You've made your choice"? Was this some kind of threat? Or was Judge Hale simply playing mind games with him? Either way, Kevin couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The hallway, once bustling with life, now felt eerily silent. Even the distant hum of conversation had faded, leaving only the sound of his own ragged breathing. Then, without warning, the lights flickered. At first it was subtle, a brief dimming followed by a return to normal brightness. But then it happened again, more pronounced this time. The fluorescent bulbs overhead buzzed loudly, casting strange shadows on the walls. People exchanged nervous glances, murmuring among themselves. Someone suggested it might be a power outage, but the explanation felt hollow, inadequate. This wasn't just a technical glitch, it was something else entirely. Judge Hale seemed unfazed by the disturbance. If anything, his demeanor grew even calmer, as though he had anticipated this exact sequence of events. He glanced briefly at the ceiling before turning back to Kevin. "It begins," he said softly, almost to himself. Kevin frowned, irritation bubbling beneath the surface. "What begins? What are you talking about?" Instead of answering, Judge Hale motioned for the security guards to stand down. "Leave us," he instructed firmly. "This matter does not concern you." Surprisingly, the guards obeyed without question, retreating to a safe distance. Whatever authority Judge Hale possessed, it was clear that no one dared to challenge him, not even armed personnel. With the hallway now cleared of distractions, Judge Hale fixed Kevin with a penetrating stare. "Come with me," he said simply, turning on his heel and walking away. Kevin hesitated, torn between defiance and curiosity. Part of him wanted to storm out, to put as much distance between himself and this bizarre situation as possible. But another part, the part that craved answers, compelled him to follow. Reluctantly, Kevin trailed after Judge Hale, his footsteps echoing softly against the tiles. Derek remained where he was, forgotten for the moment, as the two men disappeared into the judge's chambers. Once inside, Judge Hale closed the door firmly behind them, sealing them off from the outside world. The room was spacious yet sparsely decorated, dominated by a large oak desk and shelves lined with legal texts. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting golden streaks across the floor. For several moments, neither man spoke. Judge Hale moved to sit behind his desk, folding his hands neatly in front of him. Kevin lingered near the door, shifting uncomfortably from one foot to the other. Finally, unable to bear the silence any longer, he blurted out, "Okay, what's going on? Why'd you bring me in here?" Judge Hale regarded him coolly. "Because you need to understand the gravity of what you've done." Kevin threw up his hands in frustration. "I already told you it was an accident. I didn't mean to hit you." "It wasn't the slap itself that matters," Judge Hale replied, his voice steady. "It was the intent behind it, the hatred, the prejudice. That is what set this chain of events in motion." Kevin opened his mouth to protest, but Judge Hale held up a hand to silence him. "Let me show you something," he said, rising from his chair. He crossed the room to a small cabinet tucked into the corner and retrieved a peculiar object, a smooth, metallic sphere about the size of a grapefruit. Its surface shimmered faintly, reflecting the light in unusual patterns. "What is that?" Kevin asked, suspicion creeping into his tone. "This," Judge Hale said, holding the sphere aloft, is proof that our actions have consequences far beyond what we can comprehend. He placed the sphere gently on the desk and stepped back. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly the sphere began to glow, emitting a soft, pulsating light. Tiny symbols etched themselves onto its surface, swirling and shifting like liquid, ink. Kevin leaned closer, mesmerized despite himself. The symbols weren't in any language he recognized, yet somehow they seemed familiar, as though they belonged to a dream he couldn't quite remember. "They're messages," Judge Hale explained, "from beings far older and wiser than us. They've been watching humanity for centuries, waiting to see if we'll rise above our flaws or succumb to them." Kevin shook his head, backing away. "This is insane. You're crazy." "No," Judge Hale countered, his voice gentle but firm. "What I'm telling you is real." Kevin stood frozen, his eyes darting between Judge Hale and the glowing sphere on the desk. The trembling ground and ominous sky outside were impossible to ignore, but his mind refused to accept what was happening. "This is ridiculous," he muttered under his breath, running a hand through his short-cropped hair. "You're telling me some glowing ball is connected to aliens? That's insane." Judge Hale didn't respond immediately. He leaned back against his desk, arms crossed, studying Kevin with an intensity that made the officer feel like a bug under a microscope. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm but firm. "I understand why you're skeptical. If someone had told me the same thing years ago, I wouldn't have believed it either. But this isn't about belief, it's about facts. And right now the fact is that your actions have triggered something dangerous." Kevin scoffed, shaking his head. "My actions? All I did was slap you by accident. Are you really trying to say the world is ending because of one stupid mistake?" "It wasn't just a mistake," Judge Hale replied, his tone sharp enough to cut through Kevin's defensiveness. "It was the result of years of unchecked hatred and prejudice. Every time you've treated someone unfairly because of their race, every time you've let your anger override your judgment, you've been creating ripples that extend beyond our world." Kevin's face flushed red, partly from embarrassment and partly from rising frustration. "So now you're blaming me for, what, some cosmic disaster? That's not fair." "Fairness has nothing to do with it," Judge Hale said, his voice softening slightly. "The universe doesn't care about fairness. It operates on balance. Hate disrupts that balance, and when the balance tips too far, consequences follow. Today you tipped the scales." As if on cue, another tremor shook the room. This one was stronger than before, rattling the bookshelves and causing papers to scatter across the floor. Outside, the wind howled unnaturally, whipping tree branches into violent arcs. Through the window, Kevin could see people in the street stopping in their tracks, looking around in confusion and fear. A distant crash echoed, a car alarm maybe, or glass breaking. Kevin swallowed hard, his bravado faltering. "Okay, fine," he said, his voice quieter now. "Let's say I believe you. What exactly am I supposed to do about it?" Judge Hale straightened up, moving closer to Kevin. "That depends on you. You created this problem, so you'll need to fix it. But first, you need to understand what you're dealing with." He gestured toward the glowing sphere, which continued to pulse rhythmically, its surface alive with shifting symbols. "These beings, they're not gods, but they're far more advanced than us. They monitor worlds like ours, ensuring that civilizations don't spiral out of control. When a society becomes too consumed by hatred or greed, they intervene. Usually it's subtle. Natural disasters, economic collapses, things humans might dismiss as coincidence. But sometimes—" He paused, his gaze locking onto Kevin's. "Sometimes individuals like you force their hand." Kevin felt a chill run down his spine. "What does that mean? What are they going to do?" "They've opened a rift," Judge Hale explained. "A tear in the fabric of reality. It allows entities from other dimensions to enter our world. These creatures thrive on negativity, hatred, fear, chaos. The more they feed, the stronger they become. If we don't close the rift soon, they'll overwhelm us." Kevin's heart pounded in his chest. "Close it how? With that thing?" He pointed at the sphere, which seemed to hum faintly, almost
as if it could hear him. The sphere is only a tool, Judge Hale said. It helps me communicate with them, but closing the rift requires something deeper, something personal. What kind of personal?
Kevin asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. Judge Hale hesitated, choosing his words carefully. You'll need to undo the harm you've caused, not just today but over the course of your life. Acts of kindness, humility, justice, they create counterbalances, positive energy that can heal the rift. But it won't be easy. You'll have to confront the people you've hurt, admit your mistakes, and make amends. Only then will the rift begin to close. Kevin groaned, rubbing his temples. This sounds impossible. Even if I wanted to do all that, and I'm not saying I do, how would I even start? I don't know half the people I've wronged. You'll figure it out, Judge Hale said firmly. And you'll need help. Before Kevin could ask what he meant, there was a knock at the door. Both men turned to see a young woman standing in the doorway, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. She looked to be in her late 20s with shoulder-length brown hair and glasses perched on her nose. In her hands, she clutched a notebook and a pen. Sorry to interrupt, she said, stepping inside cautiously. I heard there was some kind of disturbance here. Is everything okay? This is Lisa Monroe, Judge Hale introduced her briefly. She's a journalist investigating reports of strange occurrences linked to incidents of racial bias in the area. Lisa gave Kevin a quick once-over, her brow furrowing. Wait a minute, aren't you Officer Doyle? I've seen you mentioned in a few articles. Kevin stiffened, his defenses rising again. Yeah, that's me. What's it to you? Lisa ignored, his tone focusing instead on Judge Hale. What's going on here? Why does it feel like the whole building is shaking? Judge Hale sighed, glancing at Kevin before addressing Lisa. There's no simple way to explain this, but suffice it to say we're dealing with a situation that goes beyond anything you've encountered before. Officer Doyle's actions earlier today have triggered certain events that could put everyone in danger. Lisa blinked, clearly skeptical. Danger? Like what? Aliens? Monsters? Come on, Judge Hale, you're smarter than that. To her surprise, Judge Hale nodded gravely. In a manner of speaking, yes. There's a dimensional rift forming, and unless we act quickly, it could bring catastrophic consequences. Lisa stared at him, her mouth slightly open. For a moment, she seemed ready to laugh it off, but then she noticed the glowing sphere on the desk. Her eyes widened as she took in its pulsating light and swirling symbols. What is that? She whispered, taking a step closer. It's proof, Judge Hale said simply. Proof that what I'm saying is true. Lisa hesitated, torn between disbelief and fascination. Okay. Let's say I believe you. What do you want me to do? I need you to document everything, Judge Hale replied. Your role isn't just to observe, it's to help spread awareness. People need to understand what's at stake, and Officer Doyle, he turned back to Kevin, who looked increasingly uneasy, needs someone to guide him. Guide me? Kevin repeated, incredulous. Why would I need her help? Because you can't do this alone, Judge Haley said bluntly. You'll need someone who understands the bigger picture, someone who can keep you accountable. Lisa is resourceful, intelligent, and determined, all qualities you'll need if you hope to succeed. Lisa raised an eyebrow, glancing between the two men. Wait, hold on. Are you seriously asking me to team up with him, after everything I've read about his track record? He's aware of his mistakes, Judge Hale said, or at least he's beginning to be. Whether he chooses to change is up to him. But if he doesn't, none of us will survive what's coming. Kevin clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Fine, he snapped. If it'll get you off my back, I'll work with her. But don't expect me to pretend. I trust her. Lisa smirked, unfazed by his hostility. Don't worry, I don't expect much from you either. Let's just focus on not getting killed, okay? Another tremor rocked the room, louder and more violent than the last. Books toppled from the shelves and the window pane cracked ominously. Outside, the sky had turned an eerie shade of green, streaked with flashes of lightning. Shadows flickered across the walls, though no one was casting them. We're running out of time, Judge Hale warned. Kevin, you need to decide. Will you take responsibility for what you've done, or will you let this city, and possibly the entire planet, be consumed by chaos? Kevin hesitated, his mind racing. Everything about this situation screamed absurdity, yet deep down he couldn't deny the truth staring him in the face. The trembling earth, the glowing sphere, the unnatural storm brewing outside. It all pointed to one undeniable conclusion. Something was very, very wrong. And whether he liked it or not, he was at the center of it. "All right," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do it, whatever it takes." Judge Hale nodded, a flicker of approval crossing his face. "Good, then let's get started." Lisa stepped forward, pulling out her notebook. "First things first, we need a plan. Where do we begin, Adders?" Hale gestured toward Kevin. "With him. He needs to identify the people he's wronged and find a way to make amends. Time is critical. The rift grows larger with each passing moment." Kevin exhaled sharply, already dreading the task ahead. "Fine. I'll start with Derek." He glanced at Judge Hale. "The guy I was escorting earlier. He's probably still here somewhere." Lisa jotted down a note. "Got it. We'll find him and go from there. Anything else we should know?" "One more thing," Judge Hale said, his expression grave. "Be careful. The entities feeding on the rift aren't passive observers. They'll try to stop you, using whatever means necessary. Stay alert." Kevin and Lisa exchanged uneasy looks, the weight of the situation settling heavily on their shoulders. Outside, the storm intensified, the wind howling like a living thing. Somewhere in the distance, a low growl reverberated through the air, sending shivers down their spines. The courthouse was no longer the orderly, quiet place it had been just hours before. Chaos reigned as people ran in every direction, their faces pale with fear. Objects floated eerily in midair, pens, papers, even chairs, before dropping to the floor with loud thuds. The lights flickered constantly, casting the hallways in alternating shadows and harsh brightness. Through the windows, the sky churned with unnatural colors, deep purples, sickly greens, and streaks of black that seemed to swallow the light. Kevin, Lisa, and Judge Hale moved quickly through the madness, dodging panicked bystanders and avoiding areas where the disturbances were strongest. Kevin's heart pounded in his chest, not just from the physical exertion but from the overwhelming sense of dread pressing down on him. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, though he couldn't see anyone, or anything, following them. Every time he glanced over his shoulder, there was nothing there, yet the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. "Where's Derek?" Kevin asked, his voice tight with urgency. "He was here earlier, right outside the courtroom." Lisa flipped through her notebook, scanning the notes she'd jotted down moments ago. "If I remember correctly, someone said they saw him near the holding cells. That's where suspects are kept before hearings." Judge Hale nodded, his expression grim. "We'll head there first, but stay alert. These creatures, they're drawn to fear. They'll exploit any weakness they find." "What kind of creatures are we talking about exactly?" Kevin asked, his tone sharp with frustration. "You keep mentioning them, but you haven't explained what they look like or how they operate." "They don't have a fixed form," Judge Hale replied, his voice low and steady. "They adapt based on what terrifies you most. Some might appear as shadows, others as distorted versions of people you know. Their goal is to destabilize you, to make you doubt yourself and those around you." Kevin swallowed hard, glancing nervously at the darkened corners of the hallway. "Great, so basically we're walking into a nightmare." Lisa gave him a sideways look, her lips twitching into a faint smirk despite the tension. "Welcome to my world. Except usually I'm just writing about this stuff, not living it." Kevin shot her a glare but didn't respond. Instead, he focused on putting one foot in front of the other, trying to ignore the strange noises echoing around them. A low, guttural growl rumbled nearby, followed by the sound of something heavy dragging across the floor. People screamed, scattering in all directions. Kevin clenched his fists, forcing himself to keep moving forward. When they reached the holding area, the scene was eerily quiet compared to the rest of the courthouse. The dim lighting made the space feel claustrophobic, and the air smelled faintly, metallic like blood. Rows of steel doors lined the walls, each marked with a number. Several officers stood guard, their weapons drawn, though their expressions suggested they were unsure what or who they were supposed to be protecting against. One of the officers approached them cautiously. His name tag read, Peters, and his face was pale beneath his cap. "What are you doing down here?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "It's not safe. We've already had 2 incidents, doors opening on their own, and, well, let's just say some of the prisoners aren't acting normal." Kevin exchanged a glance with Lisa and Judge Hale. "We're looking for Derek," he said. "A young guy, black, accused of theft. Do you know which cell he's in?" Officer Peters hesitated, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "Cell 7. But I wouldn't recommend going in there. Something's off about him. He's been muttering to himself, and when we checked on him earlier, his eyes, they weren't right." Kevin frowned. "Weren't right how?" "They were glowing," Peters admitted reluctantly. "Like, literally glowing. And he didn't seem scared or angry. He looked empty, like someone had hollowed him out." Lisa scribbled furiously in her notebook, her brow furrowed in concentration. Judge Hale placed a hand on Kevin's arm, stopping him before he could move toward the cell. "Be careful," he warned. "If the rift has affected him, he may not be entirely human anymore." "That's comforting," Kevin muttered under his breath. Still, he nodded and approached the cell cautiously, Lisa and Judge Hale following closely behind. The door to cell 7 was slightly ajar, creaking softly, as if pushed by an invisible breeze. Inside, Derek sat slumped on the bench, his head bowed, and shoulders hunched. At first glance, he appeared unchanged, the same tired, defeated young man Kevin had escorted earlier. But as Kevin stepped closer, he noticed the subtle differences. Derek's skin had taken on a faint grayish hue, and his breathing was shallow, almost mechanical. When he lifted his head, Kevin froze. Derek's eyes were indeed glowing, a soft, pulsating yellow light that illuminated his face in an unsettling way. He stared at Kevin without blinking, his expression blank. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, Derek opened his mouth. "You hurt me," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "You lied about me. You destroyed my life." Kevin took a step back, his stomach churning. I didn't mean to." "You did," Derek interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "You chose to. You saw me as less than human. And now, because of you, I am." Before Kevin could respond, Derek stood abruptly, his movements jerky and unnatural. The glow in his eyes intensified, spreading to his hands, which began to crackle with energy. Thin tendrils of light snaked up his arms, forming intricate patterns that pulsed in sync with his heartbeat. Lisa grabbed Kevin's arm, pulling him backward. "We need to leave. Now." "No," Judge Hale said firmly, stepping between them and Derek. "This isn't real. It's a manifestation, a projection of Kevin's guilt and fear. If we run, we give it power." "But it's attacking us," Lisa protested, pointing at Derek, whose body was now fully engulfed in light. The energy radiating from him caused the metal bars of the cell to vibrate violently, threatening to snap. Judge Hale turned to Kevin, his gaze unwavering. "Face it. Confront what you've done. Only then can we move forward." Kevin hesitated, his mind racing. Everything inside him screamed to flee, to put as much distance between himself and this terrifying scene as possible. But deep down, he knew Judge Hale was right. This wasn't just about Derek. It was about the countless lives Kevin had impacted through his actions. Running wouldn't solve anything. Summoning every ounce of courage he possessed, Kevin stepped forward, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Derek," he said, his voice shaking but determined. "I'm sorry, I was wrong about you from the beginning. I judged you unfairly, and I abused my authority. I can't take back what I did, but I want to make it right. Please, let me try." For a moment, nothing happened. Derek stood motionless, the light around him flickering uncertainly. Then, slowly, the glow began to fade, retreating back into his eyes until they returned to their natural color. His posture relaxed, and the unnatural stiffness in his movements vanished. He blinked several times as if waking from a dream before collapsing onto the bench. Lisa rushed to his side, checking to make sure he was okay. "Are you all right?" she asked gently. Derek nodded weakly, his confusion evident. What just happened? Why am I here?" "It's a long story," Lisa said, helping him to his feet. "But for now, just know you're safe." Kevin watched silently, his guilt weighing heavily on him. He hadn't expected Derek to forgive. Him, not yet, maybe not ever. But seeing the young man regain his humanity reinforced the importance of what he needed to do next. There were others like Derek, people whose lives Kevin had damaged irreparably. Making amends wouldn't be easy, but it was the only way to close the rift. As they left the holding area, the chaos in the courthouse seemed to intensify. More objects levitated, crashing loudly against walls and floors. The shadows grew darker, twisting into grotesque shapes that lunged at passers-by before dissolving into thin air. People screamed and cried, their panic feeding the growing storm outside. "We need to hurry," Judge Hale urged, leading them toward the exit. "The entities are gaining strength. Each act of kindness you perform will weaken them, but we're running out of time." Kevin nodded, his resolve hardening. "Where do we go next?" Judge Hale glanced at Lisa, who consulted her notebook. "Based on what you told me earlier, there's someone else you need to reach out to. A man named Jamal Carter. Remember him?" Kevin's jaw tightened. Of course he remembered Jamal. Years ago, Kevin had falsely accused him of stealing a wallet during a routine traffic stop. Despite evidence proving Jamal's innocence, Kevin had refused to drop the charges, ruining the young man's reputation and career. It was one of the darkest moments of Kevin's life and one he had buried deep within his conscience. "He won't want to see me," Kevin said bitterly. "Why would he even listen?" "Because you owe him that much, Judge," Hale replied, "and because the fate of this city depends on it." Lisa placed a reassuring hand on Kevin's shoulder. "We'll figure it out together. Just take it one step at a time." With renewed determination, Kevin followed Judge Hale and Lisa out of the courthouse and into the swirling maelstrom beyond. The streets were deserted, the wind whipping debris into miniature tornadoes. Lightning split the sky, illuminating jagged cracks that spread across the pavement like veins. Somewhere in the distance, a low, guttural roar echoed, sending shivers down their spines. They climbed into Lisa's car, which miraculously still worked despite the chaos surrounding them. The storm outside showed no signs of easing as Lisa's car sped through the deserted streets. Rain poured down in sheets, mixing with debris that swirled in chaotic patterns across the road. The wind howled like a living thing, battering the vehicle and making it difficult to keep control. Lightning illuminated the sky every few seconds, revealing jagged cracks spreading along buildings and sidewalks. It was as if the city itself were breaking apart. Inside the car, tension hung thick in the air. Kevin stared out the window, his reflection distorted by raindrops streaking the glass. His mind raced with thoughts of Jamal Carter, the man whose life he had ruined years ago. He could still picture Jamal's face, his anger, his disbelief, as Kevin had accused him of theft without evidence. Back then, Kevin had justified his actions, telling himself it was part of the job. Now, faced with the consequences of his prejudice, he couldn't ignore the truth any longer. He had been wrong, cruel even, and there was no way to undo the damage. But maybe, just maybe, he could begin to make things right. Lisa gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white from the strain. She glanced at Kevin through the rearview mirror, her expression unreadable. "Do you know where we're going?" she asked, her voice cutting through the silence. Kevin nodded, though his confidence wavered. "Jamal works at a repair shop on the outskirts of town now. Or at least he did last I heard. If we're lucky, he'll still be there." "Lucky might not be the word for it," Judge Hale muttered from the passenger seat. His eyes were fixed on the road ahead, scanning for signs of danger. "This rift is growing stronger. Every second, Delay gives those entities more power. Lisa frowned, glancing at him. What exactly are they? You've said they feed on fear and hatred, but what do they want? They thrive on chaos, Judge Hale explained, his tone grave. Their goal is to destabilize humanity, to push us into self-destruction. By exploiting our darkest impulses, they weaken the barriers between dimensions, allowing them to invade our world completely. And if they succeed? Kevin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Judge Hale didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his words carried a weight that sent shivers down their spines. Then this city and possibly the entire planet will become theirs, a breeding ground for suffering and despair. No one spoke after that. The gravity of the situation settled over them like a heavy blanket, leaving little room for idle conversation. Outside, the storm raged on, its fury mirroring the turmoil within the car. When they arrived at the repair shop, the scene was eerily quiet. The building stood alone on a desolate stretch of road, surrounded by empty fields and abandoned warehouses. Its windows were dark, and the sign hanging above the entrance creaked softly in the wind. Lisa parked the car near the front door, and the three of them stepped out cautiously, bracing against the biting cold and relentless rain. Kevin led the way, his footsteps crunching on gravel as he approached the entrance. The door was locked, but a dim light flickered inside, suggesting someone might still be there. He knocked loudly, calling out, "Jamal, are you here?" There was no immediate response. Kevin exchanged a glance with Lisa and Judge Hale before trying again. "Jamal, it's Kevin Doyle. I need to talk to you." After a moment, movement stirred inside. Footsteps echoed faintly, followed by the sound of locks being undone. The door opened slowly, revealing a man in his early 30s. He was tall and lean with broad shoulders and sharp features. His dark eyes narrowed as he recognized Kevin, and his expression hardened instantly. "What do you want?" Jamal asked, his voice low and clipped. He made no move to invite them in, standing firmly in the doorway as if guarding it. Kevin swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Jamal's glare. "I came to apologize," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "For what I did to you all those years ago. I was wrong, Jamal. I accused you of something you didn't do, and I destroyed your life because of it. I'm sorry." Jamal stared at him, unmoved. "You think an apology fixes everything? You ruined me, man. Do you have any idea what it's like to lose everything because of someone else's lies?" "I know," Kevin admitted, lowering his gaze. "I can't take back what I did, but I want to make it right. Please, let me try." For a long moment, Jamal didn't respond. He studied Kevin carefully, searching for sincerity in his expression. Finally, he sighed and stepped aside, gesturing for them to enter. "Come in," he said gruffly. "But don't expect me to forgive you." The interior of the repair shop was cluttered yet organized, with tools neatly arranged on shelves and half-finished projects scattered around the space. A small desk sat in the corner, covered in papers and manuals. Jamal motioned for them to sit while he leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. "So," he began, fixing Kevin with a piercing stare, "what exactly do you plan to do to make it right?" Kevin hesitated, unsure how to phrase his intentions. "I'll clear your name publicly," he said finally. "I'll admit I was wrong about you, and I'll help you get your old job back or find something better, whatever it takes." Jamal raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident in his tone. "And why should I believe you? After everything you've done, why would you suddenly care?" "It's not just about you," Kevin admitted, his voice tinged with frustration. "Something terrible is happening, something bigger than either of us. My actions set it off, and unless I fix things, it's going to destroy this city." Jamal glanced at Lisa and Judge Hale, who nodded in confirmation. "He's telling the truth," Lisa added. "We wouldn't be here otherwise." Jamal rubbed, his temples clearly conflicted. "This sounds insane," he muttered. "But fine. If it means getting justice for what you did, I'll hear you out." Relief washed over Kevin, though he knew this was only the beginning. "Thank you," he said earnestly. "You won't regret it." As they discussed the next steps, Strange noises began emanating from outside, low growls and scraping sounds that sent chills down their spines. Judge Hale moved to the window, peering cautiously through the rain-soaked glass. Shadows flickered across the landscape, twisting and writhing like living smoke. The entities were closing in. "We need to..." "Hurry," Judge Hale warned, turning back to the group. "These creatures are drawn to negativity. The more progress we make, the weaker they'll become, but time is running out." Jamal frowned, his suspicion deepening. "What kind of creatures are we talking about?" "Not creatures in the traditional sense," Judge Hale explained. "They're manifestations of hatred and fear feeding on the rift Kevin created. They'll stop at nothing to prevent us from succeeding." Jamal looked at Kevin, his expression unreadable. "You really screwed up, didn't you?" Kevin nodded, guilt weighing heavily on him. "Yeah, and I'm trying to fix it. Will you help me?" After a long pause, Jamal exhaled sharply. "All right, but this isn't forgiveness, it's cooperation. Don't think for a second that I trust you." "That's fair," Kevin said, nodding. "I don't deserve your trust, not yet." But with that, they finalized their plan. Kevin would draft a public statement admitting his wrongdoing and clearing Jamal's name. Meanwhile, Lisa would use her connections as a journalist to ensure the message reached as many people as possible. Judge Hale offered guidance, reminding them that each act of redemption weakened the rift and pushed back against the encroaching darkness. As they prepared to leave the repair shop, the storm outside intensified. Wind tore at the roof and lightning struck dangerously close, illuminating the twisted forms of the entities lurking nearby. Their glowing eyes pierced through the darkness, watching silently as the group climbed back into the car. "This isn't over," Judge Hale said as Lisa started the engine. "The hardest challenges are still ahead." Kevin clenched his fists, determination burning in his chest. "I know, but I'm ready." The car sped off into the night, its headlights cutting through the chaos like a beacon of hope. Behind them, the entities roared in frustration, their forms dissolving momentarily as the rift began to stabilize. Progress had been made, but the battle was far from won. For Kevin, Jamal, Lisa, and Judge Hale, the journey was only beginning, and the stakes had never been higher. The car rattled as Lisa drove through the storm, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The windshield wipers worked overtime, struggling to keep up with the relentless downpour. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating jagged cracks in the pavement that seemed to pulse faintly as if alive. Kevin sat in the back seat, staring out the window at the distorted world outside. His mind replayed the conversation with Jamal over and over again, each word heavy with guilt and regret. He knew he didn't deserve forgiveness, but Jamal's willingness to cooperate, even reluctantly, gave him a sliver of hope. Judge Hale sat quietly in the passenger seat, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. Though outwardly calm, his expression betrayed a deep concern. "We're making progress," he said finally, breaking the tense silence. "But the rift is still growing. Each step forward is met with resistance." "What kind of resistance?" Lisa asked, glancing at him briefly before focusing back on the treacherous road. "Are those things going to attack us?" "They already are," Judge Hale replied grimly. "They don't fight like humans do. They manipulate fear, doubt, and anger. They'll try to turn us against each other, to make us question our mission and ourselves." Kevin shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "You mean they're inside our heads? Like some kind of mind control?" "Not exactly," Judge Hale explained. "They amplify what's already there. If you're afraid, they'll make it worse. If you're angry, they'll twist it into rage. Their goal is to weaken us from within." Lisa frowned, her knuckles turning white as she tightened her grip on the wheel. "So how do we stop them?" "We stay united," Judge Hale said firmly. "Trust is our strongest weapon. As long as we support each other, they can't break us." The car fell silent, again, save for the sound of rain hammering against the roof and the occasional crack of thunder. Outside, the city looked unrecognizable. Buildings leaned precariously, their foundations weakened by the spreading cracks in the ground. Streetlights flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows that danced unnaturally. In the distance, guttural growls echoed, sending shivers down their spines. When they arrived at Lisa's apartment, it was clear they couldn't delay any longer. The storm had grown worse and the entities were closing in. Shadows flitted along the edges of the parking lot, their glowing eyes watching silently as the group hurried inside. Lisa lived in a modest one-bedroom unit on the second floor, its walls lined with bookshelves filled with notes and research materials. It wasn't much, but it would have to serve as their base of operations. Once inside, Lisa immediately set to work drafting the public statement Kevin had promised Jamal. She pulled out her laptop and began typing furiously, pausing occasionally, to ask Kevin for clarification or additional details. Kevin paced nervously behind her, running his fingers through his hair as he tried to recall every instance where he had wronged Jamal or anyone else. "This needs to be perfect, Kevin," muttered more to himself than anyone else. "If I screw this up, it won't just hurt Jamal, it could destroy everything." "It doesn't have to be perfect," Lisa said without looking up. "It just has to be honest. People will see that." Kevin nodded, though doubt lingered in his mind. Honesty felt foreign to him, especially when it came to admitting his mistakes. For years he had buried his guilt beneath layers of justification and denial. Now exposing those truths felt like tearing open an old wound. As Lisa worked, Judge Hale moved to the window, peering cautiously outside. The shadows had grown bolder, creeping closer to the building. One of them pressed against the glass, its form shifting and writhing like smoke. Its glowing eyes locked onto Judge Hale, who remained unfazed. "They're testing us," he said quietly, "seeing how far they can push." Kevin joined him at the window, his breath catching in his throat, as he caught sight of the creatures. "What happens if they get inside?" "They won't. Not unless we let them," Judge Hale replied. "Fear opens doors, Kevin. Remember that." Before Kevin could respond, Lisa spoke up. "I'm done," she announced, spinning her laptop around so everyone could see. The screen displayed a carefully worded statement outlining Kevin's wrongful accusation of Jamal and his commitment to making amends. It included a promise to publicly apologize and take responsibility for his actions. Kevin read it silently, his chest tightening with a mix of relief and dread. "This is good," he said finally. "Better than I expected." Lisa smirked faintly. "Don't thank me yet. We still need to get it out there." "That's where I come in," Judge Hale said, stepping away from the window. He retrieved the glowing sphere from his bag, the same one that had been pulsing earlier in his chambers. Placing it gently on the coffee table, he activated it with a touch. The symbols on its surface swirled faster, emitting a soft hum that filled the room. "What is that thing doing?" Kevin asked, eyeing the sphere warily. "It's amplifying the message," Judge Hale explained. "By channeling your apology through it, we ensure it reaches not just people in this city, but across dimensions. The beings responsible for the rift will know you're sincere." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Across dimensions? You mean aliens will hear this too?" "In a manner of speaking, yes," Judge Hale replied. "Their judgment matters. If they believe your intent is genuine, the rift will begin to heal." Kevin swallowed hard, suddenly feeling the weight of the entire universe resting on his shoulders. "All right," he said, taking a deep breath. "Let's do it." With Lisa recording the statement on her phone, Kevin stood in front of the sphere and began reading aloud. His voice trembled at first, but as he continued, it grew steadier. He admitted his wrongdoing, acknowledged the harm he had caused, and vowed to make amends. When he finished, the room fell silent, the only sound the gentle hum of the sphere. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the glowing symbols on the sphere dimmed, fading until the object went completely dark. Outside, the storm began to ease. The wind died down, the rain slowed, and the unnatural cracks in the ground stopped spreading. Lisa exhaled sharply, lowering her phone. "Did it work?" "It's a start," Judge Hale said, picking up the sphere. "But the rift isn't closed yet. There's more you need to do. Kevin nodded, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. What's next? Judge Hale hesitated, choosing his words carefully. The final step requires you to confront the source of the rift directly. You'll need to step into their realm, a place between worlds, and face the entity responsible for this chaos. Kevin's stomach churned. Face it? How? What does that even mean? You'll go through a portal, Judge Hale explained. It will take you to a desolate plane where time and space are fluid. There you'll meet the entity and present your case. If it believes you've truly changed, it may close the rift permanently. And if it doesn't? Kevin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Then all of this will have been for nothing, Judge Hale said bluntly. Failure means the rift consumes everything, including you. Lisa stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on Kevin's shoulder. You're not alone. We'll help however we can. Kevin forced a weak smile, though his heart raced with fear. Thanks. I appreciate that. The group prepared quickly, knowing they couldn't afford to waste time. Judge Hale led them to a secluded field on the outskirts of town, where the dimensional rift was strongest. The air here was thick with energy, crackling like static electricity. Shadows writhed across the ground, twisting into grotesque shapes that lunged at them before dissolving into thin air. In the center of the field, a shimmering portal hovered ominously, its surface rippling like water. Glowing symbols etched themselves onto its edges, pulsating in sync with the hum of the sphere. Kevin stared at it, his legs frozen in place. This is it, Judge Hale said, handing Kevin the sphere. Take this with you. It will guide you and protect you. But remember, you must convince the entity of your sincerity. Lies won't work here. Kevin nodded, clutching the sphere tightly. All right, let's do this. With one last glance at Lisa and Judge Hale, he stepped toward the portal. The closer he got, the stronger the pull became, as if the rift itself were drawing him in. Taking a deep breath, he closed his eyes and stepped through. On the other side, Kevin found himself in a surreal landscape unlike anything he had ever seen. The ground stretched endlessly, barren and cracked, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. The sky above churned with colors that defied description, swirling and shifting like liquid paint. Strange shapes moved in the distance, their forms indistinct but undeniably hostile. As Kevin took in his surroundings, a towering figure emerged from the horizon. It radiated both beauty and menace, its presence overwhelming. Its eyes glowed with an intensity that made Kevin feel exposed, as though every secret he had ever kept was laid bare. You have trespassed, the entity said, its voice resonating, in Kevin's mind rather than his ears. Why should I spare your world? Kevin swallowed hard, gripping the sphere tighter. Because I've changed, he said, his voice steady despite his fear. I've faced my mistakes and taken responsibility for them. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to prove that humanity can rise above its flaws. The entity studied him, its gaze piercing. For a long moment there was only silence. Then, slowly, the glowing symbols on the sphere began to pulse brighter, casting a warm light across the desolate plain. The first rays of sunlight pierced through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the desolate field where Kevin, Lisa, and Judge Hale stood. The storm had vanished completely, leaving behind an eerie calm. The air smelled fresh, almost too clean, as if the world itself was taking a deep breath after a long nightmare. But despite the peaceful surroundings, tension lingered in the group. Kevin clutched the glowing sphere tightly, its light dimming now that the entity's judgment had been delivered. So what happens now? Lisa asked, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft but carried an undertone of urgency. Did we fix it? Is the rift closed? Judge Hale shook his head, his expression thoughtful. Not entirely. The entity gave us a chance, a test, if you will. It's watching, waiting, to see if humanity can rise above its flaws. If we fail, the consequences will be catastrophic. Kevin frowned, shifting uncomfortably. What does that mean for me? What am I supposed to do next? You continue, Judge Hale replied simply. Every act of kindness, every effort. To make amends, it strengthens the balance. The rift won't close overnight, but your actions today have bought us time. Use it wisely. Lisa crossed her arms, glancing between Kevin and Judge Hale. And what about the rest of the city? People saw what happened last night. The floating objects, the cracks in the ground, the shadows. They're going to want answers. We tell them the truth, Judge Hale said firmly. Not all of it, of course. We explain that the chaos was caused by unseen forces and that steps are being taken to prevent it from happening again. Humanity isn't ready for the full story, not yet. Kevin nodded slowly, though doubt still gnawed at him. And if they don't believe us? They will, Lisa interjected, her tone confident. People need hope more than anything right now. If we frame this as a wake-up call, a chance to come together and address the issues dividing us, they'll listen. Judge Hale smiled faintly, approval flickering in his eyes. Exactly. Redemption starts with accountability. You've taken the first step, Kevin. Now it's up to you, and others like you, to keep moving forward. Back in the city, life began to return to normal, or as close to normal as it could be. Streets that had been deserted during the storm were slowly filling with people, their faces a mix of relief and confusion. Workers emerged from their homes to assess the damage. Broken windows, cracked sidewalks, and scattered debris. Conversations buzzed everywhere, as neighbors shared stories of the strange events they had witnessed. Kevin, Lisa, and Judge Hale returned to the courthouse, which bore visible scars from the previous night. Sections of the ceiling had collapsed, and large sections of the walls were scorched. Despite the destruction, the building remained standing, a testament to its resilience. Inside, staff members worked tirelessly to clean up the mess, their movements hurried but purposeful. In the main courtroom, a press conference was already underway. Reporters crowded around a makeshift podium, microphones jutting out like thorny branches. Cameras flashed incessantly, capturing every word spoken by officials attempting to explain the inexplicable. When Kevin entered the room alongside Lisa and Judge Hale, a hush fell over the crowd. All eyes turned to him, and for a moment, he felt exposed, as though the weight of everyone's scrutiny might crush him. Lisa stepped forward, addressing the reporters with practiced ease. Thank you for coming, she began, her voice calm and steady. Last night, our city experienced something unprecedented, events that none of us fully understand. While investigations are ongoing, one thing is clear. These incidents were not random. They were a warning, a reflection of the divisions and injustices plaguing our society. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. We cannot ignore the signs any longer. As individuals and as a community, we must confront the harm we've caused and work toward healing. That starts with accountability. With that, she gestured for Kevin to take the podium. He hesitated briefly, his heart pounding in his chest. Then, drawing strength from Lisa's reassurance and Judge Hale's quiet nod, he stepped forward. The cameras clicked incessantly, capturing his every move. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak. I'm Officer Kevin Doyle, he said, his voice trembling slightly at first. Many of you may know me or at least recognize my name. Over the years, I've made mistakes, serious ones, mistakes rooted in prejudice and fear. Last night, those mistakes came back to haunt me and our entire city. He paused, scanning the sea of faces before him. Some looked skeptical, others curious, but most seemed willing to listen. I wrongfully accused an innocent man, Jamal Carter, of theft. Because of my actions, his life was ruined. I didn't care about justice. I cared about power, and that's not who I want to be anymore. Kevin swallowed hard, his throat dry. What happened last night showed me the cost of hatred and division. It's not just about me. It's about all of us. The choices we make, the lives we touch, they matter. If we don't address the pain we've caused, we risk losing everything. He glanced at Lisa, who gave him an encouraging smile, then continued. I've apologized to Jamal and I'm working to clear his name publicly. But this isn't enough. None of us can heal alone. We need to come together, as neighbors, as friends, as human beings, to rebuild what's been broken. When he finished speaking, the room erupted into murmurs. Reporters shouted questions, their voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony. Kevin ignored them, stepping back to let Lisa handle the follow-ups. She fielded inquiries with grace, steering the conversation toward themes of unity and accountability. By the time the press conference ended, the message was clear. Change was necessary, and it had to start now. In the days that followed, Kevin threw himself into making amends. With Lisa's help, he reached out to others he had wronged over the years, people he had dismissed, humiliated, or mistreated because of their race. Each apology was difficult, each conversation heavy with emotion. Some accepted his remorse. Others remained wary, unwilling to forgive. But Kevin didn't give up. For the first time in his life, he understood the value of persistence, not for redemption, but for growth. Jamal became an unexpected ally in Kevin's journey. Though their relationship remained strained, Jamal agreed to collaborate on initiatives aimed at reforming the police force. Together, they organized workshops, town hall meetings, and training sessions designed to combat systemic racism and promote fairness within law enforcement. Slowly but surely, trust began to form, not just between them but within the broader community. Meanwhile, Judge Hale kept a watchful eye on the rift. Though it had stabilized, it hadn't disappeared entirely. Shadows still lingered at the edges of reality, a reminder of the fragility of balance. But as Kevin and others worked tirelessly to create positive change, the rift grew weaker, its influence waning. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Kevin found himself standing outside the courthouse once more. Judge Hale joined him, leaning casually against the railing. "You've done well," Judge Hale said, his tone warm with approval. "You've proven that change is possible, even for someone like you." Kevin chuckled bitterly, shaking his head. "Someone like me? A racist cop who nearly destroyed the city? A man willing to face his flaws and fight for a better future," Judge Hale corrected gently. "That's who you are now. Don't forget it." Kevin sighed, gazing out at the city skyline. "Do you think it's enough? Will the rift ever close completely?" "It depends on all of us," Judge Hale replied. "As long as humanity continues to strive for justice, compassion, and understanding, there's hope. The entities will always be watching, but so will the forces of good." For the first time in weeks, Kevin felt a sense of peace settle over him. The road ahead would be long and challenging, but he no longer walked it alone. Around him, people were waking up, realizing the importance of connection and empathy. The storm had passed, leaving behind fertile ground for new beginnings. As darkness fell, Kevin turned to leave, his footsteps echoing softly against the pavement. Behind him, Judge Hale watched silently, a faint smile playing on his lips. Battle wasn't over, but for now the balance had shifted. Redemption wasn't easy, but it was worth fighting for. And somewhere beyond the veil of reality, the entity observed quietly, its glowing eyes reflecting a spark of cautious optimism. Humanity had been given a second chance. Whether they seized it was up to them,